Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. For cables, connectors, and more, call 920-435-2973 or visit pl-259.com. And by the Ham Station. Get your new radio or antenna by calling 800-729-4373 or go to hamstation.com.
It's Ham Radio.
Good evening, everyone. This is Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, and welcome to Ham Talk Live episode number 48. Sunspot Cycles with Carl Luetzelschwab. K9LA recorded live on Thursday, January 19th, 2017. I'm your host, Neil Rapp, WB9VPG. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Ham Talk Live. Tonight, we're joined by Carl Luetzelschwab, K9LA, who will take your questions about sunspot cycles and how they affect radio propagation. We will take your calls live in just a few minutes. Last week, John Davis, WB4QDX, was here to talk about setting up a D-Star rig. We'll have some more D-Star, DMR, and System Fusion shows in the future. So if you missed the show about D-Star, you can listen anytime at hamtalklive.com or on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, SoundCloud, or YouTube, or several other podcasting sites. Hey, congratulations to Hope Lee, KM4IPF. She had over 30,000 views on a Facebook video of her working the ham radio station on the set of the TV sitcom Last Man Standing. So Hope just keeps getting all over the screen. And if you haven't seen it yet, go over to Facebook, check out the KA0XTT webpage there on Facebook, and you can watch that. One other note, we want to send our condolences to the family of Charlie Emerson in 4OKL. Charlie was the chairman of the Huntsville Ham Fest, and he became a silent key this week. He was on episode number 27 of Ham Talk Live back in August. And if you tune in to Amateur Radio Newsline tomorrow, there'll be a special tribute to the friendly ham who made Huntsville the world's friendliest ham fest. Well, we'll be back. We'll have the interview with Carl Luetzelschwab, and you can call us with your Sunspot Cycle questions on Skype. The username there is Ham Talk Live, or you can call us on the old telephone. The number is 812-NET-HAM-1. That's 812-638-4261. You can also tweet us a question. Our Twitter handle is @HamTalkLive, so we'll check those as well. And I'll be back with Carl Luetzelschwab, K9LA, right after this word from the Ham Station, right here on Ham Talk Live. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by the Ham Station. For over 37 years, the Ham Station has sold new and used radios, antennas, accessories, and equipment to hams everywhere. Give give Dan or Jeff a call at 800-729-4373 or order online at hamstation.com. Hamstation carries all the major brands like ICOM, Yaesu, and Kenwood, and they have a wide selection of radio scanners, MFJ accessories, Heil sound products, amplifiers by Mirage and Ameritron, Cushcraft antennas, and more. Easy online ordering is at hamstation.com or call 1-800-729-4373 to place an order and talk it over with the experts. The Ham Station, proud to sponsor this episode of Ham Talk Live.
We're not sure what's up with the fifth dentist, but 4 out of 5 dentists recommend listening to Ham Talk Live.
Hey, be sure to check out thehamstation.com or give Dan or Jeff a call. 800-729-4373. They've got you covered for just about anything you need. Tell them you heard it here on Ham Talk Live. We're on the air every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here at hamtalklive.com. And if you missed the show, you can listen to the archive on the website or download it from most popular podcasting websites. Carl Luetzelschwab, K9LA, was first licensed in October of 1961 with the call sign WN9AVT. His interest in amateur radio came from being a shortwave listener in the 5th and 6th grades using a National NC60 with a long wire out the basement window. His amateur radio interest ultimately led to a career in electronics. His interest in propagation goes back to his college days at Purdue University, where he earned a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering in 1969 and a Master's in 1972. Carl retired in October 2013 after 41 years as an RF design engineer with Motorola and Raytheon, which is formerly Magnavox. He's authored many articles and given many presentations on solar effects on radio propagation. He and his wife, Vicki Luetzelschwab, AE9YL, have been on several DXpeditions. He's at the top of the DXCC honor roll, having worked all current DXCC entities. He's also completed DXCC on 160 and is nearing 5-band worked all zones. His website contains many of his articles and tutorials. That's over at K9LA.us. And he's also the vice director of the ARRL Central Division. So, Carl, welcome to Ham Talk Live.
Well, hello, Neil. I'm glad to be here and hope I can provide some good information to all the listeners.
Yeah, sure. We appreciate you coming on the show and appreciate your help with things at my school as well. And we want to start off just talking about the sunspot cycle. We know from studying from the license that there's this 11-year cycle. And so tell us a little more about that cycle and where we are in that cycle right now.
Okay, Neil. Very good. Well, we measure solar cycles from solar minimum through solar maximum and then back down to solar minimum. Sometimes it's not real easy to tell when a solar minimum is because there are many things going on. Now, the average length of a solar cycle, as you stated, is about 11 years. And I can't stress the fact that it's about 11 years. Of the 24 cycles that we have in recorded history, the length varies from a couple years shorter than 11 to several years longer than 11. The average rise time of a solar cycle is about 4 years. So after hitting solar minimum, we should usually expect to see the maximum about 4 years later. And some simple math says the average descent is therefore 7 years. So what that tells us is the descent is much slower than the rise. And that's been going on for at least all the 24 cycles that we have recorded. Now, posted on in various places, I was just looking at it on QRZ.com. is Figure 1, which I thought might help. And I'll talk about Figure 1. If you can view it, that's great. If not, hopefully I can explain it. What it is just shows the smooth sunspot number for the last 6 solar cycles. That'd be cycle 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. And that extends from about 1954 up to the present date.
And let me jump in here too. If you aren't looking at the pictures, we also have those on our Twitter. So if you go to Ham Talk Live on Twitter or on our Facebook page, they're there as well as in that news post on QRZ.com. So you can try to see those if you want to follow along.
Yeah, well, thanks, Neil, for further additional information there. What we can see there is cycle 19, as maybe most of you are aware, has been the biggest one in our recorded history. Now, that doesn't say that the sun has done bigger cycles before we started even viewing sunspots, but at least 19 is the biggest. Cycle 20 was kind of small, about half the size of 19. And then cycles 21 and 22 came along, and they were pretty good. Not as big as 19, but they provided lots of good 10-meter openings worldwide. Cycle 23, which peaked around 2000 for the first peak, was not too far behind cycle 2, so it gave lots of good worldwide opportunities. And then cycle 24, if you can see the picture, it stands out. It's the lowest cycle in our lifetimes. So things have been kind of going down since cycle 19, and maybe a little bit later we'll talk about that. If you got the picture, you'll see some of those solar cycles have dual peaks. In other words, they peak the first time, then they take a little dip and then go up again. And what that is just that the solar hemispheres aren't in sync. Sunspots in the northern hemisphere sometimes are greater, and that causes a peak, and then sunspots are in the southern hemisphere are just come roaring back, and that causes another peak. Interesting phenomena, and there's a lot of good stuff that we won't talk about, but hopefully I'll cover some of the general stuff. With cycle 24, we're in the decline. We're more than halfway down to solar minimum, which is expected to be in about 2020. And then, of course, that kind of suggests that in 2024, cycle 25 will peak. So that's a little bit background on that question, Neil.
Okay, well, since we're kind of approaching the bottom of the cycle here, we noticed that bands have been pretty bad for a while. Seems like every time I get on Twitter, it's the bands are dead, Jim. And the forecast just says band closed, band closed, band closed. So why is this one so much worse than normal?
That's a real good question. As I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, cycle 24 is the lowest one in our lifetime, and it also suggests that maybe cycle 25 is going to be low also. Now, why is this cycle so much worse? Well, it's because for the past several solar cycles, the sun's magnetic field has been weakening. And of course, sunspots are tied to the sun's magnetic field and the plasma flow within the sun. So that's why it's weakening. Now, we don't fully understand, or at least solar scientists don't fully understand why the sun's magnetic field is weakening, but it is, and there sure is a lot of research trying to understand, how solar cycles are generated. We want to do that to be able to predict future cycles, because of space operations out there. An active sun creates more hazard to the astronauts. Of course, ham radio is interested in what solar cycles are doing. Now, I've got a figure 2 on there, posted to the QRZ.com and in all the places that Neil said. And what it shows is all 23 recorded solar cycles, or 24 recorded solar cycles. And what the figure shows is that the first 4 cycles were rather high. The next 3 cycles were rather low. The next 6 or so cycles were kind of high. Then we went into a period of about 4 solar cycles that were kind of low. And then we hit the modern times where cycle 19 was, and that was very high. So what we've had is we've had a period of very high solar cycles, followed by a period of low solar cycles, followed by another period of high solar cycles, followed by another period of low, and then this recent period of very high solar cycles. What that suggests is we're now headed for some low solar cycles, 24, 25, maybe even 26. Like I said, we can't really predict that very well, so we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. The solar cycles, of course, get into how good the bands are, Neil.
Yeah, and that's the next thing here is, okay, so the bands are dead. The bands are not what they have been for several years. So what do we do about it? What implications does the cycle have on trying to choose a band and operating times and get through this low part of the cycle?
Excuse me. Yeah, that's a good question. As since we've been proceeding on the descent of cycle 24, the bands have been pretty bad. And the reason for that is when there are lots of sunspots, there's lots of ionization, mostly especially in the F2 region, which is generally what is used for long-distance communications worldwide. And what that means is when there's more ionization, the higher frequencies can be refracted back to Earth. They don't go through the ionosphere into space to never return unless the universe is, closed and folds back on itself. But we won't get into that, I guess.
Yeah. We hope that's not happening.
Yeah, if you want to know more about that, Star Trek episode number...
yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, there are 2 things that really determine if you can have a QSO between you and a target location. One is there's got to be enough ionization in the ionosphere to be able to refract the frequency you're on, to send it back to Earth so it can maybe go for another hop or do something even more exotic like ducting up in the ionosphere. The other issue is ionospheric absorption. In other words, I'm sure everyone's heard of the D region, and that's responsible solely for signal strength loss during propagation. So it determines if you can hear that other station or not, and if he can hear you. Actually, there's really a third issue. It's called polarization. Vertical, circular, horizontal, etc., elliptical. But that's less of a problem, and it's usually not a big issue. So most of the time we kind of ignore it on HF at least. When we get down to 160 meters, it starts getting important for some good physical reasons. But like I said, the polarization is not a big issue, so we're not going to worry about it too much. Now, as cycle 24 approaches minimum, we're going to have less and less openings on 10, 12, and 15 meters. Now, you may wonder, how can we have any less than we're having right now, right? But generally, north-south propagation is it kind of happens on 10 meters. In fact, yesterday there were a lot of South Americans up here. I could hear them up here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is up in the northeast corner of the state. So 10 meters is not, there's going to be a lot of nothing there, but at times there could be some good propagation. And of course, during the summer, you should always check 10 meters for sporadic E. that happens regardless of a solar cycle, where we are in a solar cycle. Don't give up completely. Every once in a while, exercise those band switches. In general, of course, the low bands seem to improve as we approach solar minimum. But recently, there have been some interesting questions about this conventional wisdom. Many people have expected the low bands to be a lot better than they appear to be, and trying to figure out why they're not as good is kind of interesting. So who knows, maybe we'll learn something as we go through this solar min period. But I think the general takeaway is just for the next several years, until cycle 25 gets going, there's going to be few openings in the high bands, and most of us are going to be beyond the low bands, 17, 20, 30, 40, 80, and 160. 20 and 17 will probably still be pretty good throughout the solar min period. Of course, they won't be as good as at solar max, but they'll still be worldwide DX opportunities. 40 and 30 ought to be really, really good, and hopefully 80 and 160 will pick up. So for the next couple of years, move down in frequency is the advice.
All right, very good. That's what I'm hearing is 160. And I can kind of cheat with my antenna and get 160, but that takes some wire, so may want to think about that 160 antenna. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to take your phone calls. So get ready to call in. The number is 812-NET-HAM1, and I'll be back to take your calls with Carl Luetzelschwab right after this message from Tower Electronics right here on Ham Talk Live. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you in part by Tower Electronics. Tower Electronics has been the Ham's dime store since 1978. When you need connectors, mobile and handheld antennas, cables, or adapters, visit Scott or Jill at a Hamfest near you. Or you can order online at pl-259.com or call 920-435-2973. Stock up on those supplies like PL259 and N connectors, SMA adapters, audio cables, soldering supplies, mobile antennas, and ham sticks. Their silver-plated N connectors are even used on the International Space Station. Tower Electronics carries MFJ, Comet, Daiwa, OPEC, Workman, and Ham Pro products. And don't miss their 0% off sale going on now. Tower Electronics online at pl-259.com. Proud to sponsor this episode of Ham Talk Live.
Ham Talk Live with Neil Rapp. Hey baby, I'd love to be in your grid square.
Join the conversation. Call us on voice with Skype at Ham Talk Live or give us a call at 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. Now, here's more Ham Talk Live.
Thanks to Scott and Jill at Tower Electronics for sponsoring the show yet again tonight to help bring you Ham Talk Live. They're back on the road. They'll be at the Fort Myers, Florida, and St. Charles, Illinois Hamfest this weekend, and Collinsville, Illinois, and Arcadia, Florida next Saturday. Or you can call them at 920-435-2973 or visit them online at pl-259.com. Tell them you heard it on Ham Talk Live, and be sure to listen to Ham Talk Live Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time right here on hamtalklive.com. Also check out our Facebook page and Twitter feed. Just search for Ham Talk Live. So now it's time for your questions. So if you have a question for Carl Luetzelschwab, K9LA, call 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. Go ahead and call that right now. 812-NET-HAM1. Now is the time to call in. You can also Skype us. You can Skype us at Ham Talk Live. So give us a call on Skype and join the conversation. Or if you'd rather type, you can tweet us over on Twitter at Ham Talk Live is our handle there. So if you have a question about propagation and sunspots, give us a call. And by the way, Carl, I've noticed you've been on the ARRL audio news some lately, and my friend Sean Kutzko seems to say your last name a lot. I think he just likes saying Luetzelschwab.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine mentioned that.
Yeah, for what it's worth, we've kind of Americanized it, I guess. We pronounce it Luetzelschwab, but they even pronounce it different over in Switzerland. So yeah, what the heck.
Yeah. So what I thought I was do is see if I can outscore Sean and by saying Luetzelschwab more times in the show than he does. So and maybe we'll have a contest.
There you go.
And guess the number of times that I said Luetzelschwab tonight. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we used to see Sean quite a bit when he lived in Nineland. But now that he's out at headquarters, we see him at Dayton and maybe some other ham fest, but that's about it.
Yeah, he's got his hands full of all kinds of work out there in Connecticut. So
yeah, and
he's abandoned us of Nineland.
Yeah, he's in a lot of islands on the air, right?
Islands on the air. Yeah, there we go. And
yeah, he's
maybe a park
having a lot
or two.
of fun. Yeah, Parker. Yeah, he's having lots of fun.
All right, 812-NET-HAM1, 812-638-4261 is the phone number for Carl Luetzelschwab. I got it in there again. What are some, while we're waiting on the calls here to come in, and questions, again, you can tweet us over at Ham Talk Live on Twitter. What are some websites that people could go to get the solar weather and propagation reports and that kind of thing? What are just some website addresses that you would suggest for people to check out?
Okay, well, as one might expect, there are quite a few out there. The ARRL puts out a propagation bulletin every Friday, and it's edited by Tad, K9LA. So he talks a lot about the numbers, sunspots, the geomagnetic field indices, and also most of the time a lot of reader input. So it's good practical information that you can read there. Of course, if you're a member of the ARRL, you can subscribe to that propagation bulletin for free, and it shows up in your email every week. Of course, CQ Magazine has a propagation column by Thomas, NW7US. Lots of good info there. Now, if you're just looking on the web for some websites, spaceweather.com. Spaceweather is all one word, .com. There are lots of measurements on the left side of their homepage, and in the center is usually lots of good discussion on various issues. One of the ones that has mucho information is the Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder, Colorado. Their website is www.swpc.noaa.com. So swpc.noaa.com. And they have lots of measurements, they have models, they have lots of tutorials to help you understand what all these measurements mean.
I believe that's .gov, if I remember right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Down. Yep. It's .gov.
.gov.
Yep.
And apparently we've got some sunspots on the line here.
Okay.
Your audio's breaking up a little bit, so I don't.
Oh, okay.
Well, okay, maybe it's not sunspots. But,
Sunspots, yeah. Maybe it's a solar.
So we apologize for that, but keep on going. We're in good shape here.
Okay. Also, www.qrz.com has a little panel, shows solar terrestrial data. Another good site is www.solarham.net. It has lots of data. And there are many more out there, and I'm sorry if I didn't include maybe some of your favorites, but they're all over the place. And, it's kind of like propagation prediction programs. They're all the same. It's the bells and whistles and how they present the data that's different. And that's what I think you'll find with all these websites. A lot of common data, how they present it. And, of course, that says you'll probably feel more comfortable with maybe a certain website and kind of stick to that.
Yeah, and I like to follow Dr. Tamitha Scove, too, over at spaceweather.tv. She does a great job on the visuals and some good stuff there, too. So all kinds of stuff out there to take a look at. So those are some great resources, and I will put a list of those together and send those out on Twitter and Facebook after the show, so you can get a hold of those again if you missed those. So those will be up on Facebook and Twitter afterwards. 812-NET-HAM1 is the phone number, 812-638-4261. Or you can tweet us over at Twitter at Ham Talk Live, or you can call us on Skype at Ham Talk Live if you have a question. One other thing that I've always wondered in listening to the W1AW bulletins, we always have the sunspot numbers at the end. Today's sunspot numbers are, I kind of think sometimes it's kind of like a fortune cookie. Your lucky numbers for today are 24, 78. What are those sunspot numbers that they give out on the W1AW bulletins, and how can we use those to help figure this stuff out?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question, Neil. Those numbers are what we observe, and you have to realize that counting sunspots is subjective. Humans do it, so there can be biases in there. And of course, it depends on how good your telescope is, the sky cover, etc. And that's why they use a bunch of observatories to come up with a sunspot number. Hold on here, the cat's getting twisted in the headphone here.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, one of the cats is active, but okay. So
it's not the first time that's happened on the show,
right,
by the way.
Probably not. So we count sunspots, which are subjective, but we try and get them as right as we can. Of course, there's another solar parameter. It's called the 10.7 centimeter solar flux. That is measured, so it's much more of an objective measurement. And of course, you have to keep your, the receiver and calibrated, etc., and all that. But still, it's there's no human interpretation involved. Now, sunspots and the 10.7 centimeter solar flux are proxies for the true ionizing radiation, which is at much, much shorter wavelengths than 10.7 centimeters. But there are relationships that relate sunspots to 10.7 centimeter solar flux. You'll probably find those on that NOAA.gov website. So we use those numbers to get a general picture of what propagation is like. Generally, we'd like very high sunspot numbers, very high 10.7 centimeter solar flux. That would make the higher bands like 15, 12, and 10 very good for worldwide communications. And in general, if the sunspot number is greater than about 50 or so, then 10 meters has a chance of being open. If the sunspot number is only around 35, it suggests, 15 meters at least should be open. Those are some rough numbers, and they also correspond to solar fluxes. If the solar flux is greater than about 100, then 10 meters is open. If it's greater than about 90, it's at least 15 meters will be open. So we use those, and of course, this brings us into the propagation prediction programs that are available. There are many of them out there. There's W6EL prop. It's a free download. And on my website is a tutorial on how to download it and use it and interpret it. Also, the Voice of America program, VOACAP, is also a free download on the website. Just do a Google search and you'll find that program. There's a tutorial on my website at K9LA.us for how to download it, set it up and use it and interpret it. We have to remember that our understanding of the ionosphere is statistical in nature. Unfortunately, a given sunspot number or solar flux number does not map to a unique level of ionization of the ionosphere. So you just have to remember that our predictions are statistical over a month's time frame. And once you understand that, they begin to make sense, and you can do some planning on, what's the best band to talk to, Uncle Joe over there in maybe Arizona or something. So using the sunspot numbers it just gives an indication of what bands might be open. The lower bands, generally the ionization is always high enough that you don't have to worry about the level of ionization. There's always enough to refract those lower frequencies back to Earth, and all you're left with is how much absorption is there, and will it put the signal below your noise, which generally is limited by external noise around you, man-made noise and atmospheric noise. Also in the bulletins are the geomagnetic indices, the K index and the A index. The K index is a 3-hour index of how the magnetic field of the Earth is varying or being disturbed. The A index is essentially the average of the 8 3-hour K indices. So that tells you if the ionosphere is disturbed or not. In general, we'd like a quiet magnetic field, which means a low A and K indices. But of course, there are always exceptions, and sometimes high A and K indices are useful, like aurora at VHF frequencies. Sometimes the ionosphere can be enhanced at low latitudes by a elevated K indice. So, there are some general guidelines to follow, but just understand that it's a very complicated system up there, and a lot of interesting things happen. And the more you know about them, the more you may be prepared to work something that your friends may not work.
Carl Luetzelschwab, K9LA, is our guest. You can call in and ask him a question at 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. We have just a few minutes remaining, so give us a call on there or on Skype. Give us an audio call, or you can tweet us over on Twitter at Ham Talk Live. One other thing I just thought of, Carl, is most of the time I'm in a hurry, I'm either in a contest or I've got a few minutes to check things before I go upstairs to the ham shack at school and get the kids on the air. And so I go over to DX Summit or QRZ and look at that little band conditions thing and observed and predicted, and sometimes it seems like that's accurate, and sometimes it doesn't. So I'm wondering how much of that is just kind of like weather. It's predicted, and how much of that is pure measurement.
Well, I think most of it is pure measurement. Interestingly, the ionosphere varies on a day-to-day basis quite a bit. Although solar radiation instigates the ionization process, the condition of the Earth's magnetic field also comes into play in determining how much ionization there is at a given point, at a given time. And interestingly, we're discovering and doing much more research in events that happen in the lower atmosphere that couple up to the ionosphere, and they have an impact on what the ionization is. So, since we don't understand that, that's why we have a statistical model of the ionosphere. The best way to understand predictions are to realize that they're probably a monthly median value. In other words, kind of almost like an average over a month's time frame. So on any given day within that month's time frame, it could be 10 to 30% different, 10% higher to 30% lower. So it's tough to predict propagation on a very short-term basis. In other words, what's happening today. We just don't have it yet. Of course, there's lots of work by the military, etc., on taking measurements from ionosons and total electron content from GPS systems and assimilate that into a model to try and get a more up-to-date picture. I'm sure we'll see more and more to that, and I know many universities are working on physical models of the ionosphere and the atmosphere really, that will hopefully give us, what's the ionosphere doing right now. I find the best way to go find out how the bands are doing is, I monitor a packet cluster. It shows, stations spot other stations, and that gives me a good idea what the band is doing right now. On the higher bands, there are also the IARU NCDXF beacon system, where in a 3-minute period, you could assess worldwide propagation on a given band because there are 18 beacons scattered all throughout the world. So that'll give you a good idea what's going on 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10 meters. Unfortunately, we don't have anything on the lower bands. But maybe someday we will. But there are ways to assess, short term what the bands are like. But those predictions you see on all the websites are, just general, and realize that maybe one band up or down could really be what's happening. Just based on the predictions.
All right, very good. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We're just about out of time, so want to thank you for doing that, and I will get those websites up online here after the show. So that is wrap for this week's edition of Ham Talk Live. I'd like to thank my guest Carl Luetzelschwab, K9LA, and everyone out there in cyberspace for listening and calling in, and invite you all back next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time when Richard Garriott DeCaillou, W5KWQ, will be here to talk about operating ham radio from space and his new book called Explore Create. Richard was one of the first space tourists on the International Space Station, and the old-timers like me may remember his father, Owen, W5LFL, who was an astronaut on Skylab and the space shuttle, and was the first to operate ham radio from space. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about his dad as well. And for a list of all of our upcoming guests, visit hamtalklive.com and just click on the link there. So for now, this is Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, saying 7375, and as always, may the good DX be yours.
Seven 3 and good luck from Ham Talk Live.